Circling. Hi. Hi, Lourdes. How are you?
Terrific. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. We have our computer issues resolved now, and I think we can move forward. Correct?
Yes, I hope so.
Well, we had the magic man take care of it, so
Oh, yeah.
let's go into it. So we're talking about people pleasing, and I already admitted that I do a little people pleasing sometimes, and I think you confessed as well.
Yep, absolutely. It's an easy trap to fall into because the reflections that you get back from other people are, always positive. You're so great. Thank you so much. There's appreciation and gratitude and encouragement to continue people pleasing behavior, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got a little, and is it an endorphin kick?
Yeah, it's you're rewarded for your self-sacrifice, right? For your giving to others. But the danger is that you diminish the giving to yourself and that you don't set boundaries. And, it can diminish the amount of time that you dedicate to your own needs, desires, and goals.
Right. No, definitely. And let me, because you hit upon that, the need for the self-care. So let me go on to the next slide.
The resentment, that's like so relatable for me, because when you're constantly giving to others and doing for others and you're putting yourself on the back burner, then it's inevitable that resentments will rise, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely, because when you start to give, if you don't take care of yourself, it's like, everybody always says you have to take care of yourself. You can't give from an empty vessel. And so you have to take care of yourself in order to be able to give. And if you're giving too much, you're going to be empty quicker. And yeah, definitely, it's going to fill with resentments, for sure.
Right. And it can also erode your self-worth and your self-esteem, because you're constantly making everyone else's needs or desires, the asks, you're making them more important than your own. And so that can easily lead to a diminishment of feeling, worthy and valued yourself, because if you're not even on your own list, right, that's a problem.
Right. If you're not even on your own list. The thing here that you have on the slide about it actually damages the fabric of your relationships. And of course, the number one relationship is the one that you have with yourself, who you are for yourself. And if you're not taking care of yourself, it's not that the relationships that you have are inauthentic. It's that they're not as authentic as they could be, because if you express to the other person, hey, in a kind, compassionate way, it's like, hey, I can't do that for you because I'm just not available. That's when you're really authentic. And when you show up for yourself that way, you're actually showing up for other people, and you're letting other people know that it's okay to show up for yourself, that it's valid. And obviously there's a point where I don't think that it's about being selfish. I think it's more about, hey, if you can help and it doesn't infringe or hurt you in any way, then great. If you're not doing it out of pressure or people pleasing, then that's a great reason to move forward and help someone out, or do a small favor, make a phone call, whatever it might be.
Right. And I think it's probably on probably a future slide, that this idea of what is the motivation. Is it because you feel, like you have to constantly please others, or they're not going to like you anymore. They're not going to value you anymore, because sometimes that can be where we get stuck in terms of how others view us, and having kind of the positive feedback from others, as opposed to like the self-validation, not needing the external validation. And that can also be one of the pitfalls of constantly being in a people-pleasing mode. And then what you said with regards to relationships, it's giving to others is a gift, right?
Right.
But it shouldn't be done out of guilt or obligation or self-sacrifice. I think too often those can be the motivators, or to even maintain a relationship.
Right.
I have certainly been exposed to that kind of thing, where it's kind of like the sword of Damocles, right? It's like, oh, it's like made very clear, if I don't do X, Y, and Z, then I'll be diminished in their eyes for not agreeing with or acquiescing to their requests or demands.
Right. And I think that this, obviously, depending on where you are in this people pleasing, because, sometimes you just go with the flow, because it is easier. But only sometimes, not all the time. Because I think that as children, it's dependent on us. We have to agree with our parents in order to survive. We have to agree with the people that take care of us, whether it's, in school or at home or other caretakers. It's part of our survival mechanism. However, as adults, we have to recognize that nothing's going to happen to us if we say no. In many instances, if we say no, but we have that visceral fear of being, kicked out of the group. And that's something that has to be reconciled. And if you're a people pleaser, that's definitely something that you have to look into and say, I'm safe, I can survive, I'm likable, I love myself, and so on and so on, and it goes on. But definitely, it's your slide is spot on.
Yeah, I mean, being kicked out of the group, I mean, really, that is, I think that is a concern that many people have, that if they don't go along, if they don't give in, then they're going to be kicked out of let's say the friend group, for example. But, there's a line of cooperation, but then there has to be boundaries in terms of what you are willing to do to be in that group.
Right.
And, being threatened, even, subtly, with exclusion is something that we sometimes have to deal with. But if that's being threatened, then possibly you need new friends. Right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely an unhealthy situation. And unfortunately, I have seen it where even as adults, that people do that, and they start shunning the other friend. And it even happens in families. It definitely happens in the work environment. But once you are, depending again, who you are for yourself, will give you the strength to know that you don't need the validation from the other people. And it gives you the strength to say, hey, I'm going to survive without these people.
So this brings up kind of a funny story from easily 3 decades ago. I worked for a small company, and there were, I worked in an office, and there were 2 women and a bunch of men. And there were 2 restrooms. And they were gender neutral restrooms at the time. This is like 30 years ago, so that hadn't come into play yet. But the men were an absolute mess and
Disaster?
in the bathroom. And so we got permission from the CEO to take one of the restrooms and make it just a women's restroom so that we didn't have to deal with the messes.
Uh-huh.
And that was our only goal. We just were disgusted on a daily basis with what we were faced with.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was definitely one of those situations where the men were very unhappy with us and kind of for a period of time were like kind of hostile towards us. They just were not pleased and let us know that they were not pleased.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't change a thing. We didn't go back, but it definitely, they were less friendly than they had been.
Right. Yeah. And we'll have to call those growing pains, right? Because that is the thing, that when you set your own boundaries and when you have self-respect and when you have validation and you're strong with who you are to yourself, it helps other people to shift as well. It opens up a new space for people to say, well, that really is how I should be taking care of myself. It gives them a permission and a glimpse at what could be a healthier situation for them. Let me move on to the next slide. Unless you're going to say something else.
Nope.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this is so true, huh?
Yeah. I mean, and this for me is like, it speaks of burnout, doing so much for other people to make everyone happy that, you just exhaust yourself and you don't replenish yourself because you're so busy overextending yourself to take care of other people's needs and desires.
Right. And I think that, as parents, parents tend to take on too much in some regards, especially the mothers. They take on way too much. And even in childless marriages, it's so skewed, or used to be. And now it's like, hey, we're both adults. We both work. We're both contributing. You have to split down the line or pay for additional services. It's like you can't expect somebody to come home and get dinner on the table. It's like, well, she needs to put her feet up, or he needs to put his feet up and just let go of everything that happened today, right? And I think that that's something that happens a lot.
Right. One part of the relationship being one person being overburdened
Mm-hmm.
by the responsibilities and really needing to voice the fact that more equity needs to be established in how the jobs and roles are distributed.
All right, definitely. We'll go on to the next slide. Yes, the boundaries issue, huh?
Yeah, and learning to say no with kindness and compassion, but letting that no stick.
Yeah, I think that what happens sometimes is when you're learning to say no, you're overly aggressive. You're overly aggressive because you're nervous about what's going to happen, the backlash, right? And I think that maybe you start, if you're really people pleasing, then maybe you start with with just saying I don't have the time, or saying that doesn't work on my schedule. Using other words that it doesn't force you to say no if you're not comfortable yet saying no, or saying no with with additional information, just to be someone who can say no. Because some people, they start practicing saying no, but they're very aggressive about it. It's like no, and
well, yeah, I mean,
no, and it's like right, it's like there's no.
If you're learning to be assertive after not being assertive
Right.
for, all of your life, then
Right.
yes, the tendency is to overcorrect and be
Correct.
super aggressive with your assertiveness and really just kind of, stand in that posture of I'm not taking this anymore kind of
Right.
thing, or,
Right.
you're going to steamroll over me. And, with time, you do find the balance of, the middle path of just stating no, whether or not you want to explain, it's up to you. You don't
Right.
really owe people an explanation.
Right.
Just, stating that it's not a match.
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, these people, they're not used to you saying no. So it's not that they're getting upset with you. It's just that they're just not accustomed to you saying no. So you say, no, I can't. No, sorry, it's not possible, or whatever. Or you just say, no, let me get back to you later, or something like that. And it's like, it's you have to give people an adjustment period to realize that you're going to say no. And don't worry, you don't have to be angry about it. And
Yeah.
it's not as a big deal. Once you get used to it, it's quite comfortable.
Right. And another thing to try, if you're uncomfortable saying no, then at least pausing in giving your response and saying, let me think about it. Let me sleep on it. Can I get back to you about this
Right.
later? Just to give yourself some time and space to really evaluate, is it a yes? Is it a no? And then get back to the person, because sometimes you can be caught off guard, and because you're used to being that people pleaser, you feel pressured to do that. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's easier to just hit pause and be like, let me get back to you on that.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
might be an easy way for people to segue into being less of a people pleaser.
Right. Perfect. Let me go on. And this is our last slide. Yeah, this is again about trying to make everyone happy, to keep the peace.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've covered quite a bit of this in
Mhm.
terms of like really being true to yourself about whether or not the request is a match, it aligns to your values, whether or not you actually have the time to do what's being asked of you, without sacrificing something that you were looking forward to or really value in your life. And that's super important, is making sure that you're on your own list, making sure that you're taking care of your own needs, and that you're not, falling into over obligation just to, appease others and stay in their good graces.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, great. So this was fantastic. I love your slides, and I'm glad we had the opportunity to go over this people-pleasing pitfalls list. Again, if anybody has any questions, please be in touch with Lourdes through Messenger or IM, and I'm also available mostly on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, that would be the best way to reach out to me. Lourdes, do you have any final words?
Nope, absolutely wonderful to see you again and to have this chat.
Perfect. Thank you all, and see you next week.